Okay, next news topic of the week. This actually happened again Friday last when we'd actually finished filming the prior direct. But Ninja Theory and Microsoft put out the recommended PC specifications for Hellblade 2. And as is the tradition, I like to get Alex to comment on them. So Alex,
yes.
Could you please comment on them?
Okay, so the first thing I want to point out is that there is some descriptive nature of this in here due to the bottom note about essentially upscaling being a recommendation for targeting higher frame rates of like 60 FPS.
Right.
That is, I think, a key thing, as a lot of these system specs that come out don't often actually say what they're targeting in terms of frame rate, and I feel that is bad, and it just left nebulous. And it also goes to show that based upon that we're looking at native resolution here from the description. Then the description essentially of 1440p seems to me, based upon how I read this, to be 30 FPS at native 1440p, probably with TSR native 100%. And then achieving 30 FPS at like the high spec, for example. All kind of reasonable at that point in time, because if you look at modern UE5 using like hardware RT in the epic mode, which is maybe what high is, it's really hard to know because they're not lining up with the typical naming nomenclature there of what Unreal has. That it seems like a 3080, for example, like I think that makes a bit of sense for an internal resolution.
Yep.
That all sounds reasonable to me. The thing that I really take issue with is the way they put the Intel chips on here. I don't think they make any sense.
In what way?
I don't know. Rich?
Oh, you're talking about the GPUs?
The GPUs, the Intel GPUs. Did you see that?
Yeah. So basically, the A580, which is the lowest Intel gaming GPU I would recommend, I guess. It seems to be going over both the minimum and medium. Yeah. Which is slightly odd because it's paired with GPUs that are considerably, I guess, certainly in the medium space, considerably more powerful.
And also above that, though, I think this is the second time I think we've seen most recently where Intel GPUs are put on there, but I'm not sure if they're actually achieving the same. They're put on there from like this is where it fits in the stack perspective, but they're not put on there from like a performance perspective. And I think we've seen this in the past before where, yes, they're covering all their bases here, and it's very great. It's nice that they put any Intel chips on GPUs on here at all, but I don't think it actually covers the real performance you should expect, especially in comparison to the GPUs that they're putting it next to, which are way better. The
concept of an A770 being up there with a 3080 and a 6800
is absurd.
XT is hilarious.
It is not at all in anywhere near the same level of performance.
Yeah, no sort of frame rate target for these specs is also a bit of a red flag for me.
Yes.
You expect 30 FPS because that's what it's like running on consoles, and it kind of makes sense at that point.
Yeah, it does make sense. Another thing I'm curious about is that the game is apparently going to be forced aspect ratio on Xbox. Kind of like the Order 1886, based upon everything we know at this point. What is aspect ratio like on PC? Does the game default to a 21:9 aspect ratio like it does on console? Weird, really weird. Because your monitor is, your monitor, and that's like on PC, like defaulting aspect ratio bars, even for a 16:9 experience, is like so. I can't even think of a game off the top of my head that would do that. John? I don't think so. I can't even think of a single one.
The Evil Within, the original one.
Yes, but that was such a bad port. My goodness. Like that is one where like people were just like didn't. And the best part about the Evil Within is it was still rendering the area underneath the black bars.
Oh, yeah,
they were a post process.
It was just
so
an
this
overlay.
wouldn't do that. I'm presuming because they want to. They're more competent developers than that original thing. Involved. Okay, so that is all. There's a lot of nebulous stuff here. I don't understand actually whether or not it's going to be 21:9 forced. We assume 30 FPS. I think there's another positive thing to read out of this is actually the VRAM being a separate category here. One thing I really like about UE5 is yes, I've had issues with CPU performance and stuttering for a variety of things, but it seems to be ridiculously VRAM efficient, especially in comparison to other titles where, like I look at The Last of Us and I'm just like, what am I getting here for the VRAM cost? Whereas with the UE5 title, it's like, you get ray tracing. You get
Last
virtual
of Us
texture.
turned out to be the remaining memory modules that haven't been filled.
Yes. So here, very curious about that. Another thing that is a big question mark is UE5 titles can struggle to get above 30 FPS reasonably on like good, reasonable CPU hardware at times. This game is targeting 30 FPS on Xbox Series X. It could have potentially a very hard time on PC without frame generation to getting like a good clean above 60 FPS even, or even a good 60 FPS, which is the one thing I fear about this and which could lead to it having a very bad reputation when it comes out, because people, regardless of how realistic these expectations are, if they don't get like a good clean 60 in a game, the Steam reviews are going to be awful.
Right.
So there's a lot that I'm a little bit worried about as a result of this, but I think these specs, in comparison to others I've seen in the past, they are a little bit better. The one thing that, as always, specs don't mean too much in the end because they are not so well put together always. And as a result, I highly suggest everyone wait to look at reviews from places like Computer Base, or wait for the initial like buyers to say something about the game, or wait for us for our video covering it as well too, where we'll try and give you a better idea of this than what the specs will give out. Because right now you have a general idea, but it's still not a complete picture.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of issues I've got. First of all, in terms of the CPU side of things, when you don't know the frame rate you're targeting, these recommendations on the CPU side are kind of suboptimal, to say the least, because when you've got like a 3080, you're not really planning on playing this game at 30 FPS, are you? You might be able to do 1440p at native resolution, but arguably you would be using DLSS to get to 60, and in that case you still need a pretty potent CPU. So what CPU do I need for 60 FPS? I don't know, is the short answer. I can kind of extrapolate the GPU side of things based on what they're saying here, because I can factor in stuff like frame generation and spatial upscaling as well, but I don't really know on the CPU side. What we are looking at on the GPU side looks to be if I think Oliver was talking about resolutions on Series X of like circa like 1200p to 1440p, maybe lower than that actually, thinking about it, because it's actually letterboxed. So this actually, seems to fit entirely in line with our sort of expectations of what a console can do. Assuming DRS in there, you're basically talking about a sort of hybrid of the GPU selection of of medium and recommended there. So that kind of makes sense. But beyond that, yes, the VRAM side of things does look very, very promising. And if you've got frame generation in there as well, it's going to be good. Beyond that, though, I don't know. We have to wait and see.
Yeah.
So when we come down to the quality of the port, and I hope it's good. I really do.
Yeah, the one thing that I do laugh about here a little bit, though, looking at it, because you just called out the CPU stuff, and I did question whether or not this could be a game that is really hard to get 60 FPS in. It is a little bit amusing to see the difference between high at 4K and high at 1440p. Even though this is just a resolution change, they're describing a much better processor, a 10700K versus 12. Yeah, this is a funny thing that happens in specs where they just like keep upping them, even though they're just changing resolution, which usually resolution is rather CPU agnostic in most games. So that is amusing, to say the least. I would love for some developer to contact me before they put out their specs, because I think I could help them. They probably have a huge, they probably have a large testing room with a lot of PC components, and they probably have enough data out there to put out something that is even more informative than what they end up putting out. So, you know, I would love for a developer, if you're out there and you're watching this, please send me an email. I can do it completely anonymously. I don't need to know anything, but I can maybe help you put out more informative recommended or minimum specifications.
But ultimately, resolution and frame rate targets for your recommended kit is
a big part.
It's a big part of it, and it's not here, which is a bit disappointing. But yeah, I do you just sort of invited everyone to slide into your DMs there, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, I
talking
don't know
hardcore
if I have public DMs anymore. Yeah, send me your hardcore specs. Alex, you haven't responded to my hardcore specs.
Hardcore specs in bio.
Yeah, oh my God. Oh, that's good, Rich. That's good.